Out here, and like I said, the question isn't. It's not so black and white.
Now, on the other token, we talk about morality. What do we feel morally about abortion?
I believe it's a woman's right to do what she chooses to do. I don't feel like
that a woman should have multiple abortions because it does take a toll on your body.
And your body can only stand but so much medically.
Someone there to help me raise this child. The man's not there.
And then when I got home that night, I couldn't stop crying.
The woman basically is a parent that puts in a lot and invests a lot into this individual. Don't get me wrong, daddies are there.
My name is Chris Slattery, and here in 2013 we've reached the point where for the past 28 years our organization has served expectant mothers from all over New York City and suburbs to give them help and hope in an unplanned pregnancy. I started this organization because I was stunned to learn that New York City was the abortion capital of the Western world. In the early 70s, when New York State legalized abortion, we had 250,000 abortions in the first couple of years of the 70s. And then after Roe v. Wade in 1973, all states opened abortion facilities. So the flood that had come to New York from all over subsided. And we were averaging, though, in the mid-80s, 110,000 abortions a year. Now, we're waiting on the 2011 statistics at this point in February of 2013. But the last reported year, there were over 83,000 abortions in the city of New York. 92% of them were performed on residents of New York City. So the average over the last 43 years, since 1970, has been about 100,000 abortions a year. That's 4.3 million abortions in New York City. That's about half the current population of New York City has been aborted. And you ask me, or someone asks me regularly, why did you get into this fight? When half the population has been wiped out voluntarily, you shouldn't have to ask. In 1984-85, we, with just very little money, with $1,500 in our pockets, we opened our first office in a neighborhood in the East 20s in the Gramercy Park area, a pregnancy center that offered alternatives to abortion with free pregnancy testing, free counseling, free ultrasounds, and prenatal care. And we've expanded to locations throughout the city with the exception of Staten Island. We're in all the boroughs but Staten Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, and Queens. We offer ultrasounds out of 4 or 5 locations in the city, free. We offer prenatal care in 3 or 4 locations, free. We offer counseling, referrals for housing, jobs, legal aid, whatever most women need. We can get them as help so that they feel that they can go ahead with a baby if they're poor or they're stressed or they're pressured. Now, we can't solve the problems for every young mother or older mother. We would recommend, under severe circumstances, that a mother choose an adoption if she's completely incapable of raising a child. I mean, there are those circumstances, but there are also many thousands of waiting couples who will willingly adopt a child that a mother cannot raise herself. So we offer, you know, soup to nuts. We do not, of course, subsidize 18 years of raising a child out of our own pockets. We would be quickly bankrupt and couldn't do it. We're primarily providing support during the pregnancy and then referrals for additional services afterwards. But for those that feel that they're just incapable of being a mother for a child, adoption is the best option, and we've been recommending this from the beginning. We have tried to locate from the very beginning as near to abortion facilities where babies are being killed. And when we first opened in the mid-'80s, we were around the corner from Planned Parenthood's Manhattan location. We were unable to get into the buildings nearby because there were apartment houses and churches and a synagogue, and you can't run a pregnancy center out of a church or a synagogue or a shop on the ground floor. So we were actually in a building right next to Planned Parenthood's thrift shop, which was called the second time around. That's if you made it the first time around in their offices, because the vast majority of Planned Parenthood's pregnant clients come out without a baby. So they do not do prenatal care at the vast majority of Planned Parenthoods, certainly not in the New York City ones. Their primary service for pregnant women is abortion. That is, they are the largest abortion provider in the world. They do 1 out of 4 of America's abortions. They take in $500 million annually in taxpayer fees and funding from city, state, county, and federal funding. So they are a government monopoly, if you will, posing as a mom and pop service, even posing as people that care about breast cancer. They don't do mammograms. I can refer anyone for a mammogram. But the fact is, we've located across the street from them here in the South Bronx. We're in the same building that they're in at 44 Court Street, downtown Brooklyn. And a second abortion clinic is in that same building. So 3 of us are competing to reach expectant mothers in downtown Brooklyn. We have other offices down the street from or nearby abortion clinics because we want to save babies and we want to bring the mothers to us in competition with these killing centers. I'm often asked, when do human rights begin? And they begin at the beginning. The beginning of every human life is a fertilization of the baby in the mother's womb. And of course, there are some fertilizations that exist in the fallopian tubes, and those growing, developing babies can't be saved with modern technology. An ectopic pregnancy ends in death for the baby. Miscarriages end in death for the baby. That's the natural process of life and death, and some little children just never make it because nature takes its course and they die. But voluntarily interrupting through chemical or surgical means the life of a developing baby from fertilization is a crime against humanity, because we all began in our mother's wombs at the beginning. You can't identify any time where after our conception something has been added that has made us human. We were human from the beginning. So we can't be parsing when that human being is a person. Are we still a person on our deathbed when we're feeble, we're incapable of caring for ourselves, feeding ourselves? When we're near death, are we still a person up till the moment of death? Or is the period a couple of weeks or months or years before when we no longer can contribute to society as an older person? Are we no longer human? If we are not human at the beginning, when we're incapable of caring for ourselves as babies, and are we then also not human at the end of life when we're in a hospital bed or being nursed at home in our final days? See, the mentality that deprives humanity of unborn children is the same inhumanity that would deprive the elderly of their right to die a natural death without artificial interference, in other words, being killed through euthanasia. The same mentality that will easily destroy life in our beginning is the same mentality that will destroy life when we're handicapped. Should we dispatch a veteran who's lost all his limbs because he can no longer feed himself, bathe himself, is a human being? My son is currently in Afghanistan. If his arms and legs are blown off, and all he can do for himself is chew and speak, is he a human being? Should we put him out of his misery? Or should we put on new arms and legs, as was just happened for one soldier who literally was the first in world history to have new arms and legs attached to his body? Are we, if we're not in one piece anymore, if we're in 5 pieces, are we still human? I mean, we have to get to what is human and what is, you know, we use this expression, it's inhumane to treat animals without dignity. Well, we treat our animals in this world with more dignity, at least in the United States, than we do our babies. We slaughter in this country about 1.25 million babies through surgical and chemical abortion annually. And we have done so for over 40 years. We have had a death toll of 55 million plus unborn children taken, to put it euphemistically, in this country in the last 40 years. And are we a saner society than we used to be? Are we a more loving, caring, compassionate society? Have we reduced the poverty level by eliminating 55 million children? I don't think so. I don't think we're a better society for what we've done. I think it's contributed to a violent society, a society that sanctions legal killing of our children, or has in some states sanctioned the legal murder of our elderly. And we are constantly seeing societies consumed with gun control. With Chicago, for instance, one of the cities with the most gun control, has the worst murder rate in America. So are we going to copy that system of assuming that we solve all solutions with more controls? The greatest example of providing to Americans an education that life is precious and life is worth preserving and respecting would be to restore the protections that we had in our country for our most vulnerable and defenseless, our unborn. You take New York City, for example, where we're filming. We have 40% of New York City children are killed in an abortion facility every year. Did you know, as some of the viewers are watching me right now, did you realize that Brooklyn women who are of black skin abort 70% of their babies in Brooklyn? 70% abortion rate of black women in Brooklyn, which is probably the heaviest percentage of blacks in the city, live in that borough. 60% of all blacks citywide abort their babies. I mean, the KKK would be proud of the abortion industry in New York because they've done a marvelous job of exterminating black Americans through free abortion services and providing nothing of substance to help expectant mothers who are desperately getting rid of their children and eliminating the black race from America. A depopulation plan that would make Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood very proud. Our abortion rate of Hispanics is 43%. 43% of Hispanics abort their babies. The big concern from the Hispanic community is immigration reform. What, to replace the 43% of the babies that they've aborted themselves here in New York City? They want to bring in Mexicans and South Americans to replace the children they won't have? What's the point? If you want more Hispanics to get jobs and to lead our country, stop killing your children. If the blacks want empowerment, raise your children well. Don't kill them. 89% of abortions in New York City, probably in the last year or two, it's been 85 to 90,000 abortions. 89% of those were on blacks, Hispanics, and Asians. The white population is declining too, okay, with low reproductive rates, but it's actually at a slower rate than lower rates of abortion are to whites here in New York City. Now, you know, a mother doesn't think demographically when she's pregnant. Oh, how is this going to affect my race? She's thinking about herself. And so, why do women get abortions? It's mainly because of their personal crisis, their personal circumstances. Now, when a young woman comes into a pregnancy center like EMC, she's going to get listened to. We're going to understand her story, her family situation, her background. I have a young mother in another room right here, right now, who's black, who's 7 months pregnant, who came into our office about 5 months ago and was considering an abortion. I was just listening to her story. This is the first time I met her. And she told me that her father, she hasn't seen in 10 years. She has no idea where he is or whether he's alive. Her stepfather is dead. And so she's been basically raised by a single mother. She struggles because she couldn't pay for her second year of college. She had to drop out. But she's going to deliver in about 8 weeks a little baby boy or girl. I don't know the sex. And she wants to help fellow black women, Hispanic women, anybody who's in a circumstance like she was in. Her boyfriend, who she only knew for a few months, basically tried to coerce her into an abortion and has dumped her, like happens so often in New York. But she's got courage, and she's got hope, and she wants to pass on some of that hope and encouragement that we gave her and are giving her now to others, so that we, one by one, assist girls and women. And I believe that that one-by-one assistance is the most important thing that the pro-life movement does. It gives individuals help with their individual problems, proposing individual solutions. Is the pro-life movement only about outlawing abortion? No, it isn't. And will women still get pregnant if abortion was made illegal? Of course they would. Would they still need help? Of course. Would we shut down pregnancy centers if abortion was illegal? Of course not. We'd need to give more help than ever, because the women that would have been getting abortions, most of them would obey the law and not go ahead with an abortion. Yeah, would abortion be illegal and more dangerous? Perhaps somewhat more dangerous than it is now. But that wouldn't be much consolation to the family from White Plains, New York, the school teacher who died in her late 20s last week in Germantown, Maryland, who went for an abortion at 33 weeks and died because of the callousness and lack of care and the lack of medical help that was provided when the complications arose from that late-term abortion. A young woman's life is ended because of those advocates that allow rogue abortionists who are back alley abortionists in the front alley right now. We don't hear much about the Dr. Gosnell's House of Horrors in Philadelphia. He and 8 total members of their staff were charged with murder for various live births that they snuffed out after complications from late-term abortions. The women that died there in that House of Horrors in Philadelphia were the victims of an uncaring community who knew this place was dangerous. A state of Philadelphia whose Department of Health failed to inspect abortion clinics for over 15 years. In a society that pretends that women's choices come first. In other words, they'll preserve abortion whether they're done well or whether they're done poorly, all in the name of principles that are propped up with just propaganda without real concern for women's lives and real concern for women's health. So the notion that we have safe abortion in America is a joke. Abortion kills women all the time, and it rarely results in shutdowns of abortion clinics. We had an abortionist kill a woman in Queens 2.5 years ago, A1 Medical Services on Roosevelt Avenue. It took the state of New York 2 years to revoke the medical license of that butcher from Roosevelt Avenue. A strip of abortion clinics out in Queens I call Abortion Row, where there are about 10 abortion facilities preying on Hispanic women with no inspections, with no press conferences by Christine Quinn and the council members from Queens when that woman died a tragic death in Queens. In the mid-'80s, I was asked earlier why I started EMC. In the mid-'80s, there were years where there were as many as 25 deaths by abortion in legal abortion clinics a year. And these were rarely reported in the media in New York. And even today, the deaths are considered collateral damage, if you will. That is just the part of legal abortion that we have to put up with. People ask about abortion and the hard cases of should abortion be legal in cases of rape, incest, or life of the mother? My answer is no, never. Why? Not to be insensitive, but we should never punish the child for the crime of its father. The crime of rape or incest, it should be punished severely. Rapists should be reported and punished. Too often, women will not report their rapes, especially from a family member or a relative, out of embarrassment and shame and fear that they did something wrong. Rapists are a heinous group of people, and they should be punished for what they've done. But I know numerous people. I once put on a conference of 8 speakers. Every one of those speakers were conceived by their own mothers in rape or incest. And those people are no less human than you or I. And why should their lives have been snuffed out? Would their mothers have been happier Their mothers are proud of their sons and daughters whose fathers may not have been in any way exemplary and may have been cruel or inhuman in their behavior. But we don't destroy human life intentionally unless it's in self-defense or in a just war. And we do not contribute to the health of society by destroying children for any reason. Fetal deformity was the reason that the mother in White Plains is dead. She tried to abort a baby that was allegedly handicapped, was going to be handicapped when born. I mean, it was in the womb, and it wasn't a threat to her life. It was a threat to her future life, she thought. She chose poorly, as did her family who brought her there, knew exactly what they were doing. In terms of, you know, they were risking her life with a dangerous late-term abortion at 33 weeks. And we are looking at legislation here in New York State that would make late third trimester abortions commonplace in our state. The governor and legislature in New York are contemplating legislation dropping all regulations on third trimester, final weeks of abortion up till birth, so that a woman like from White Plains can go to a clinic here in the Bronx or in Westchester or any of the boroughs and abort babies up till birth, just like she was about to. And then we're going to have body bags on demand in these places for the casualties. So my question I posed earlier, that, you know, should we abort babies that are because of rape, incest, or fetal deformities? Absolutely not. The babies that can be brought into the world with Down syndrome or other imperfections are little angels, and that bring joy and happiness to the families that choose to raise them. But we abort 90% of Down syndrome babies in America today. These people are just considered animals to destroy, with like a horse with one leg or a dog with 3 legs. And, you know, what's the point? We just euthanize them. We kill them. You know, Hitler had a great plan to supposedly purify Germany before the onslaught of World War II. He and the German philosophers and doctors and purists and eugenicists decided to wipe out hundreds of thousands of ill and or handicapped Germans who were in their hospitals and their sanitariums and or being treated at home and living in handicapped conditions. I personally had in our office for years an Austrian woman whose father and grandfather were both ordered by the Nazis to euthanize by lethal injection hundreds of, if not thousands of handicapped Germans. Neither one of them could live with themselves after what they did. My counselor's father and grandfather committed suicide because they could not live with their own cowardice, because they were put in a position where they either followed orders to murder other people or they would be murdered. It was a tough spot to be in, but they couldn't live with themselves for having cooperated in a great system of evil. Well, we still have a great system of evil. It's a worldwide industry of destroying the future of our world through inhumane, callous, indifferent, and brutal slaughter of innocent children, primarily in America of our black and Hispanic populations, which are on the decline, because those here have given up hope and they haven't been given proper help. We are not a better world for legalized abortion of wanted or unwanted children. There is no such thing as an unwanted child. That is a false concept. There is always someone. It's only that will take care of an unwanted child. It's only a question of finding a parent or parents for that child that will love and cherish and raise that child properly. What irks me the most about the pro-choice crowd, and if you're a pro-choice listener, here's what irks me about your position, is what are you choosing? You're choosing death, often a painful death, for an innocent human being who has the right to life, that you are eviscerating, destroying their fundamental, most fundamental human right, which was declared in the Declaration of Independence in our country. The right to life is the first human right our country was founded on. We destroyed our country in a civil war because our Southern brothers and sisters chose to preserve the destruction and slavery of our black brothers and sisters. It wasn't the only reason for the American Civil War, but it was a primary reason. Our country was founded under false pretenses where the South insisted there would be no signing of the Declaration of Independence if explicitly slavery was excluded. So we put off to a later day the elimination of slavery. We know Thomas Jefferson was a hypocrite. He owned slaves. He had an affair with a slave. He had children by a slave. But the fact is, he wrote that Declaration of Independence, and he fought for the exclusion of slavery, and they couldn't get the country together if it explicitly excluded slavery. We know that from the history of the preparation of the Declaration. The Southern states wouldn't have gone along with a exclusion explicitly of slavery. But nevertheless, there was a statement that we have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pro-choicers, you are excluding the right to life of individual children by saying that a child in a mother's womb is part of her body. How can a boy be part of a girl? I mean, this is literally, there's no physics or science to your view that a baby is part of your body. It can have a completely different blood type and be a different sex. Obviously, a baby is not part of your body. Yes, it may be a resident, if you will, to put it crudely, in your body. But it's a human being, and this is the way they come into the world. They usually come into the world inside a mother's womb. Will there be some future science where we can develop babies outside the womb? There's been science fiction. Someday we'll be looking back and laughing at what an antiquated way to raise a baby inside a mother's womb. It may literally be possible in the future that we can develop artificial wombs and then develop a whole new debate about whether that's ethical or not. But for now, what irks me most is that you are often the so-called liberal left that often the pro-choicers hide in are more concerned about the eggs and the chicks of birds and turtles and whales and seals and frogs and tadpoles and dogs and cats, and you're complete hypocrites because you care more for animals without souls, without eternal life, without humanity, and you callously, indifferently care nothing about the children that are humans and persons, and you talk about women's right to choose to bloody murder their children, and you want my respect? I have absolutely no respect for your views. I respect you as a person, and I'll debate you till hell freezes over on this issue. But don't ask me for respect for your absolutely hollow, shallow opinion about, quote, pro-choice, because you will not acknowledge what your choice is. It is the destruction of a human being with fundamental rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Well, I'm asked often about pills, and there are two types of pills, and they sometimes get confused. There's the morning after pill, and then there's the abortion pills. These are two different types of pills. Let's be explicit about them. The morning after pills are basically double doses of birth control pills that are taken in immediately after sex or in the first couple of days after sex to ostensibly prevent conception, although they can act to cause a chemical abortion. If fertilization has taken place, the life of the child has begun. And then what we're doing with the pills is we're causing an early chemical abortion, making the womb inhospitable to the arriving fertilized embryo, which will attach to the wall of the womb. But if these pills are used, they can destroy the lining of the womb and make the baby die. This isn't perhaps willed by some of the people who take the pills, but they don't care. They just don't want a baby. Now, this is a legitimate, this can be used legitimately, in my opinion, only if a woman is not ovulating and was raped. It is proper to use these pills to prevent conception if someone's been raped, even in a Catholic facility, Christian facility, where life is protected and is precious. Other than that, there's no legitimate use of these pills because in many cases they don't test for ovulation. They don't know whether the woman might be pregnant already. So when it comes to the abortion pills, these are taken later, 5 to 9 weeks in pregnancy, when a known pregnancy is already there and a baby is developing and growing rapidly. There's a heartbeat detectable. The baby is going to be destroyed by the abortion pills with chemicals that, and in various methods, some use suppository methods, some use pills and then expulsion methods to destroy the baby. It's not a pretty approach to an abortion. It results in the expulsion of a dead baby privately by the mother, often at the wrong time and wrong place. And it's also a murder of a child, and it's not justifiable under any circumstances. It's just another way to kill a baby. And as I said earlier, the morning after pill is not always going to kill a baby. It may prevent conception of a baby, but it's going to be potentially abortifacient in nature. And so we see in New York City schools over 12,000, the New York Post just recently reported over 12,000 morning after pill packets have been given without parental consent or notification to high school and middle school kids in New York City. This is another one of the Mike Bloomberg social experimentations gone wild, where we're using our schools for population control. We're using our schools as health clinics instead of focusing on the reading and writing and arithmetic that was, I thought anyway, the purpose of a school. My question to our New York City government is, why are you trying to crush alternatives to abortion? Are Christine Quinn, Mike Bloomberg, the 39 city council members in the spring of 2011 who voted to regulate and restrict the free speech of pregnancy centers that, like I run, why did you do it? Is the abortion rate of 40% too low for you? Would you like to see more Black and Hispanic babies aborted? Would you like to see a decline of our population? Would you like to see more congressional seats lost to New York State? Would you like to see less workers and our economy decline? Would you like to still focus on the treatment of horses and animals instead of the human beings that are so callously disposed of at unprecedented rates, like 70% of Black women in Brooklyn? Would you like to see 80% of Black women abort their babies, or 90%, or 60 or 70% of Hispanics? When is too many abortions enough for you? You have tried unconstitutionally to crush the freedom of pregnancy centers to speak freely to girls and women, and you were shut down by a federal court on July 13th, 2011, when your Bill 371, Local Law 17, was found unconstitutional because you violated the First Amendment rights of our organization to advertise and to speak freely to the girls and women in alternative to abortion facilities. Did you try to regulate the abortion industry when the mother of 4 was killed in Queens 2 years ago? No. Did you hold a press conference in concern and care for her family? No, you didn't. Did you call for an investigation by the health department when that woman died? No, you didn't. How many women have died in pregnancy centers in America? None. How many women have died in abortion clinics legally in this country? Thousands. Will you be holding a press conference in White Plains and a vigil in solidarity with the mother, with the school teacher who died last week with her 33-week baby? Will you be offering that family help and hope? I don't think so. I don't think you care about women, City Council President Christine Quinn. I think you're a phony baloney. And so are most of your fellow Democrats who voted to crush alternative to abortion pregnancy services in our city. I think you're going to be shut down on your efforts to crush our First Amendment rights, because they're fundamental in our country. The freedom of speech, assembly, organization. And you want to crush out every single scintilla of life and hope that is offered to girls and women in our city, because you're phony balonies. You offer only death and destruction to women. You don't offer help. You're interested in your own political futures and careers, and you use the pro-choice mantra to gin up your election and your votes. And I disrespect you. I don't appreciate what you've tried to do. And I pray for ultimate victory in the courts of appeals in our case that will go to the U.S. Supreme Court eventually, and we will be vindicated because we still live in a free country. But you would like to go to a Soviet Union-style country where your enemies, like us, are in chains and shut down so that an unregulated abortion industry can kill at will. You say that to give women the best medical care, they can't be delayed in their pregnancies, they have to get immediate medical care, but you want to expand abortion up till birth and risk late-term abortions in our state by expanding abortion laws and making abortion no longer a crime under any circumstances in the third trimester. You want to literally allow nurses to perform abortions in our state without a physician present or performing it. You want to lower health standards instead of increasing them. You care nothing for women. You're phony balonies, and I am being polite because you don't care a hoot about women whose lives will be at huge risk because of the plan of Christine Quinn, Mike Bloomberg, and Andy Cuomo, and Jeff Klein, and Andrea Stewart Cousins. I'm talking about various politicians from New York State who are leading our state Senate and government. And of course, Bloomberg and Quinn are running our city government. But they're all out to expand recklessly abortion rights and to trample on those of us in the pro-life community trying to possibly make it a crime for a nurse or a doctor to not refer a woman to kill her child. They basically want to shut down our pregnancy centers by regulations of our speech, our advertising, and our failure to refer for abortions. They want to make us a pariah. And this is why federal courts shut down their law, which has, for over a year and a half, gone into effect. This bill number 17, this law, local law number 17, was a prime example of how the so-called pro-choice people want choice only for the abortionists and not to provide real help and hope to girls and women in our city. I'll tell you that the law, if we fail to, under this law, disclose to a woman that we don't do abortions or refer for abortions or perform contraceptives or prescribe it, I should say, or refer for it, we would be subject to a $2,500 fine for failing to advertise or disclose these things at the front door of our offices, on signs in our offices, in waiting room signs. And if we were guilty of 3 violations by the Department of Consumer Affairs, we're not selling anything. Our services are all free, advocacy and information. So they want us to be under the big brother control of bureaucrats at the Department of Consumer Affairs. When those bureaucrats find us 3 times, they shut our office down. If I opened the door to an office shut down by the Department of Consumer Affairs, I go to jail for 6 months. For doing what? For not putting up a sign? For not telling a woman what we don't do? This is 1984 in 2013. 1984, I'm talking about George Orwell and the Orwellian mind and speech control of a government that is out of touch with the Constitution of the United States, out of touch with a free society, out of touch with the rights of man and the rights of women. And to close my thoughts with this invitation to the opponents of the pro-life movement to actually give me a call. I'll debate you anytime, anywhere. My email is slatteryny@gmail.com. and perhaps they'll put that up on the screen, and you can email me. Let's set up a talk. Let's set up a debate. Let's set up a meaningful dialogue, perhaps. And perhaps you have utter contempt for me and my and our work, and but I'll meet you on the front lines, or I'll meet you in a meeting room, and we'll argue rationally the science of life and death, the science and life and death of abortion, and we'll see whether you are a true humanitarian or not when we argue that human life is precious. And I will compare your position to that of the of those in our modern history that have been the most brutal totalitarian regimes, the Nazi regime, communist regimes that have annihilated millions. I will compare your plan of population control to theirs. And I will ultimately try to change your mind by demolishing your arguments, not you as a person. And I will ultimately, hopefully, get you to embrace the human beings in our society that are not yet born, and embrace care and concern for the mothers born and who need help, and care and concern for the children who are born and need help. And we can differ on the economic solutions to care for the poor and the needy. And you will argue that we're better off with less people. I will argue the opposite. I think the plan of legalized abortion has brought untold misery to America. It has not made us a better nation. It has not made women happier. It has not made women healthier. It has not reduced crime, welfare, child abuse, spousal abuse, domestic violence, gun violence, anything. It hasn't solved one problem at all. It hasn't reduced crime. There are those that argue that legalized abortion has reduced crime. There are those that have argued it has made us a better world. And I would differ till my dying breath. I don't see where the decline of our population and the short of the immigration of outsiders that have propped up our population, I don't see how it's made us economically more viable. The loss of 55 million people to our economy has been in the multi-trillions of dollars of left on the table unpaid taxes, unprovided Social Security benefits to our elderly who cannot, in the future, in an unsustainable Social Security system that will collapse on itself because of the aging of the Western world. Because of birth control and abortion, we don't have the young people to support the elderly, which is creating an enormous pressure to just destroy the elderly, just as Hitler did, with advanced euthanasia. Because if you don't value life at the beginning, what's the rationale for valuing it at the end or in the middle? Why don't we shoot all our wounded veterans? If my son comes back from Afghanistan, where he is now, without a limb or two, wouldn't it be the humane thing to just shoot him? That's all I have to say.